Today is the last day of the liturgical year. This evening, you could say, is New Year's Eve in the liturgical calendar. Advent starts tomorrow. You know, this evening will be the 5 p.m. Mass for Advent, the first Sunday of Advent, which, by the way, I love Advent. Advent always cheers me up. I don't know why, just the beautiful candles and just anticipating Jesus coming. But this week, preceding Advent, if those of you who are kind of familiar with the readings in the yearly cycle, this is the week, this last week, it's all apocalyptic stuff. Did you notice that? And it's pretty intense apocalyptic stuff for a whole week, because it kind of, it points to the what do you call it, the parousia and the eschaton, all, the end, the dramatic end of all things. And temporal things, obviously things we will be with the Lord forever, for all of eternity. And so this week, this last week, is kind of like doom and gloom week. Like I said, if you look at the readings, it's what it is, and all these warnings. And so I was looking at the, just kind of readings, and, there's some stuff, like the Lord, in the acclamation, the gospel acclamation, the Lord says, be watchful. And then in the gospel today, Jesus says, be on guard. And he goes on to say, be alert at all times. And I was thinking to myself, I don't want to be alert at all times. We have enough anxiety as it is. I don't need to be told to be alert at all times. And he goes on to say, the day catch you unexpectedly like a trap. That doesn't help our anxiety, But I think, like everything in life, it's a balance, In life, we have to find a balance. And we should be awake and alert and on guard. I mean, you're a fool if you're not. But we know we're not supposed to dwell on these things. We're certainly not supposed to worry about these things. And I don't even think we're supposed to think too much about these things. The Bible tells us what to think about. Philippians chapter 4, Paul says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And part of being a Christian is we try to discipline our minds. We decide what we're going to think about. I mean, sometimes, we're visited by thoughts and they bug us, and we, try to, turn our attention to something else. But, generally, You've heard the expression of a 90-minute tape, Young people wouldn't know the concept of a 90-minute tape, but those tapes, and we used to take songs and put our own songs, like a song list, on a 90-minute tape. Well, the thing is, our mind is kind of like a 90-minute tape. We play over the same ideas over and over again, and if there's something in our mind that we don't like, just delete that song. You decide what's on the 90-minute tape. But what's my point? The point is, we need to find a balance. We need to be aware, but we also need to, if we're going to think about things, it has to be good, positive, uplifting things, But the whole awareness thing, I want to mention it because, again, it's doom and gloom week. If there's one week we can kind of talk about the doom and gloom, the reality of being aware, it's this week. And so we're living in weird times, wonderful times, but weird times. And again, I think as Catholics, we need to be aware. Like the classic example of cultural Catholics being completely clued out is the many cultural Catholics, they'll vote for a politician who pushes the most abominable things that go totally against God's natural law. Things that go totally against, the moral teaching. You'll have a politician into this bad stuff, and Catholics, cultural Catholics in droves, I voted for him. You think to yourself, what color is the sky in your world? Do you have any clue, about God's natural law, about what is right and wrong? And there's, I'm hoping that they're not, there's reduced culpability just because they're completely clued out, I mean, if you're voting for a politician who's pushing something that's an abomination, you vote for that person, you're kind of complicit. I don't know if Catholics realize that. If the politician you vote for is pushing for something awful, and you vote for him, and you think, Canada, our country, it's going bonkers, we have all these awful things. Well, why do we have leaders pushing awful things? because we vote for them. And so yeah, I don't want to get on that. What I want to get into is just, again, the weird time we're in. This is kind of, I apologize, it's kind of depressing, but here's 4 things. First of all, the whole reality of globalism right now, and this is, again, in the context of not being worried, not being anxious, but just being aware of Catholics, this whole globalism thing, where in the past, like if there was an issue in the world, different parts of the world would deal with them accordingly. But now there's this push that, if there's an issue, every single person on the face of the earth needs to do this. An example is the digital ID. They're pushing this digital ID. Now, I'm not saying digital ID is intrinsically evil, but if the people pushing it are weird and into weird stuff, and they're pushing digital ID, you can't get on an airplane, you can't get maybe medical help or whatever unless you have your digital ID. Like, again, it's awkward. What do you do with that, And then AI. You know what's interesting? I don't know anyone who's excited about AI. Like in the past, there was technological advances we were so excited about, more comfortable planes and helicopters and new production technologies. So, you have better golf clubs and better snowboards and better, we were excited about the new technological advances. Who's excited about AI? Nobody. It's depressing. Like all these advances that we're seeing right now, like including, robots. Everyone's into robots now. I don't know if you're aware of that. China's building robots like it's going out of style. It's crazy. They say robots are going to do everything. Who wants robots? I don't mind robots, whatever, making cars in the factory, but I don't want robots running around everywhere. No one's excited about AI. No one's excited about robots. No one's excited about any or hardly any of the new technological. It's depressing. And yet again, this is what's kind of, being pushed or, whatever. And then the whole device addiction plague we're seeing right now. People living on their phones, glued to their phones, their iPads. And again, I don't say this judgmentally because it's something, it's a struggle in my life. But it's like a bit of a zombie apocalypse. Go to a doctor's or a dentist's office, everyone's, in front of their phone. It's crazy, Anyway, I won't get into a big, long speech about that. And then, worst of all, this whole MAID. I've spoken about this before. I don't like to harp about it, but like we're killing our old people and depressed people in this country. And people are reporting they're feeling pressured sometimes. They go for medical help. They're feeling like that's weird, and it's just starting. It's just starting. You think right now, it's not too bad. Not everyone's being again, it's kind of, I don't want to say the word frightening because we're not supposed to be afraid. So my point is, as Catholics, we need to be aware of these things. We need to pray. I don't know what the future, holds. Again, we certainly shouldn't be afraid. But again, during this week when we're into all the apocalyptic readings, we might as well be aware. But I'm going to end with the point I began with. I know people, and it's so sad, and sometimes I can kind of tend towards this. I know people, this is all they think about. They are anxious. They spend hours on the internet, into all this stuff. And the scripture is very clear. Don't do that. You have to think about good, positive things. Be aware. But at the end of the day, the Lord can call us home anytime. And so it's important to rejoice in the Lord always, pray without ceasing, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, and give thanks in all circumstances.